Waiters of Reddit, what's the most messed up conversation you've overheard while waiting tables? I was bringing a check for a wealthy local businessman who was dining with his girlfriend. It was a big tab and I was already counting the tip when the woman hurled his drink in his face and yelled to an aghast room of people, "You didn't even pay for the abortion!" and stormed out. The man calmly brushed the ice off of his suit and looked around and said, "Not the first time, won't be the last." I wheeled off and gave him the bill later. I had a couple that came in with their kid. It's slow and we have time to take it slow, so I'm just relaxing there when I see the couple getting into an argument. It's clear from the facial expressions that they're getting into a heated argument. Just as I'm about to come over with the bill, before it got even worse, she throws her drink at his face, throws the food on the ground, and leaves with the kid. He's stranded at the restaurant since she took the car and awkwardly stays here for about an hour. We tried to make him comfortable, but it was incredibly awkward. After he left, the police came to our restaurant about 3 hours later asking if he ate here. Turns out he died that night in a hit and run. St. Patrick's Day, working at a pretty busy bar in San Diego. Waiting on a table of fraternity guys from SDSU. No big deal. I take the order and notice something is seriously off with one of the guys. Not like he was hammered or anything, but he was just making a weird face. The bar was crowded and noisy, so his bros didn't notice it. But I walked up by him and was like, "Are you okay?" He looked at me, pale as a ghost, and said, "I just pooped my pants. It's everywhere. It's in my shoes." Now, as a man who's been there, I felt I had to help out. I also worked security at this place, so grabbed the attention of one of the big Tongan bouncers. Took the bouncer aside, and if you don't know this, Tongans are some of the most helpful people around, and told him the deal as I'm starting to smell and see poop. The next thing I know, the three big Tongan doormen come out of nowhere and muscle this guy out, just saying the usual, "Sorry guys, but your friend has to go." They took him in the back and already had a clean pair of boxers and jeans for the guy, and let him clean up in the staff bathroom, and one of them actually gave him a ride home. I was busy and didn't see him leave, but got a cool note from their fraternity the next day and an honorary sweatshirt and a gift certificate to Best Buy. I still have it somewhere. He got to save face with the girls they were with, and they were all regulars after that, and tipped really well. There was this group of 4 elderly women who would come into my family's restaurant once a month. One month, one of them came by herself. I asked, "Hi Edith, where are all your friends?" "They all died." And she broke into tears. I felt like crap the rest of the night. I worked at a high-end bistro during summers in college, and the rule was even if we were closing at 11 and someone came in at 10:59, we served them. So this older, attractive white man in his 60s came in with a small but built Asian guy in his 20s. They sat across each other at a two-top and just ordered wine and dessert. This was pretty typical, and as they were my last table, I could leave after I had bussed their table and tipped out. So I started packing up the silverware and menus at the tables in my section and doing my other closing duties. I was walking by their table and heard they were having a heated yet quiet argument, as if they didn't want to make a scene. I heard snippets of, "No, $600 and you spend the night," by the older male, and "No, $800, blowjob, 1 round of butt stuff, and I leave when I'm done." And I was mentally like, okay, and left them to negotiate alone. Yeah, I would probably do the same thing. Just let them sort out their business. I mean, it's not as if you can chime in on a conversation like that, right? I was a Waffle House waitress for 4 years in high school. I saw and heard quite a bit. I honestly got used to old truckers asking me if I wanted to make an extra tip in the parking lot at the grand old age of 16. But the one time I literally had to say WTF, I didn't even understand the conversation. 2 Latino couples were sharing a booth and seemed to be having a good time. I don't speak Spanish, but nothing in their tone made it seem unusual. Out of nowhere, one of the husbands grabs his wife by the back of her hair, slams her face into the table, and just goes about his conversation. He didn't even look at her. She wiped her face off and just went back to talking and listening. No one batted an eye at the table. I delivered their food a few minutes later, and all 4 of them seemed like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. I've called out dozens of customers in my day. You can say pretty much whatever you want as a Waffle House waitress since it's not exactly a classy joint, but I had no idea how to respond to that scenario. I once waited on a couple that broke up while I was waiting on them. They came separately. The wife showed up first. She was very chipper and friendly, and I grabbed her a water while she was waiting on her husband. The husband showed up around 10 minutes later. When I went to the table to grab his drink, I could hear her saying, "What's wrong? What's your deal? Just talk to me." While I was waiting at the bar for his drink, one of the hosts ran up to me and said, "Hey, I think your table's breaking up." I look up to the corner where they're sitting and the wife is sobbing. Now what do? I have to bring him his drink, even though surely they aren't going to stay and eat now, right? Wrong. I brought him his drink, and when I set it down in front of him, expecting him to tell me thanks but no thanks, we're leaving, he says, "Do you know what you want?" Through her tears, she says, "Yes," and orders. What the heck? I have to wait on these people now. I then have one of the most awkward tables of my life, having to keep up my peppy attitude and fake smiles while this poor woman's life is crashing down. When it was all over and I set the bill down in front of the husband, I figured he would at least be kind enough to pay the bill. Alas, he pushed it back to me and said, "Can you separate this, please?" This guy's so brutal, I'm surprised he didn't slide you divorce papers to sign as a witness as well. Not really messed up, but just a complete lack of understanding from a privileged person. I worked at a popular restaurant chain while I was in college. This was about 7 years ago. The owners of one of the largest beer breweries in the country came in to eat. They're sitting there eating and the wife says to the husband, "I don't understand what you mean by living paycheck to paycheck." He explains to her what living paycheck to paycheck actually means in a very respectful and unbiased fashion. She still doesn't get it. She questions why these people don't have any money left over after they pay their bills and why they don't just change that, or why their bills are so high, or why they don't just make more money. They were out to eat with another couple who also tried explaining this to her. A solid 10 minutes were spent on trying to educate this woman on the fact that most people don't live like she's used to. All of them sort of gave up trying when they realized she just didn't get it. You could literally see the confusion on her face. It gave me a new perspective on things. It was the last table of my last shift of my last day at this place. Two top, man and a woman. Both pretty attractive and looking extremely happy to be out on a date together. The meal goes smoothly. They ask for the check. I bring it. Upon returning to grab their credit card, I ask if they'd like me to box up their leftovers. He says sure, and just as I'm leaning in to grab her plate of pasta, she looks him dead in the eye while holding his hand and says, "I'm pregnant." I freeze a bit, then silently carry their plates back to the kitchen. I was so shocked that I was on autopilot mode and accidentally threw their leftovers away. The guy was not very hungry after that anyway. Too bad you threw it away. She's eating for two now, you know. I waited tables and bartended in the late 80s after college. Two ladies sat down at a table in my section. I greeted them and got them water. A man showed up and instantly turned pale. Turns out it was his wife and his girlfriend, and they had found out about each other and set him up. He had his head in his hands the whole time. I didn't hear a lot of what they were saying, but the pieces I did hear were unpleasant. Two guys sitting at my bar top, looking super shady, decided they were going to scout out for ladies. Now, if you've worked in a continuously loud environment, you know that people will say anything when they think you can't hear them. Man, that was stupid. "What about the blonde with the blue dress?" "Nah, I was thinking of that one." He pointed to a smaller one, more fragile looking brunette, sitting by herself. They get quiet for a bit before the first guy asks, "Are you sure you want to do this?" The second guy, "That's what she gets for dressing like that. Let's hope she's parked in the back." I said screw that and called the police. They were asked to leave and one of the officers offered to follow the girl home. Kudos to our original poster on this one because he prevented what could have been a very dangerous situation for this girl. I waited tables at the Olive Garden 10 years ago. Not really messed up as much as it was funny. A guy and his wife sat down at a table and immediately started arguing. Something about his affair and how a baby from it was costing them money. Finally, it culminated as I was bringing out their salad, and as I walked away, I heard the wife say, "Maybe if you hadn't boned our son's girlfriend and gotten her pregnant, we could afford to eat somewhere nicer than Olive Garden. Oh look, the highlight of my meals, unlimited bagged salad. Maybe you could save up and we could go to Joe's Crab Shack for our anniversary." I hate to say it, but maybe this relationship should just come to an end at this point. That sounds like a messed up situation. A waitress at our restaurant, a wealthy but crazy 45-year-old divorcee, was written up 4 times for saying obscene things to guests. The last straw, she gave a plate of food to a man at the bar with a huge mustache and said, "Nice mustache, I'd like to sit on your face," and carried on back to the kitchen as if she'd said nothing at all. You hear a lot of things, and I try not to judge, but the 2 that just stick out in my mind the most are, number 1, the first time, please note that's the first, a mother handed me her child's bottle and asked me to fill it with Coke. And number 2 was a table of 3. A mom and her 2 kids, maybe about 7 and 5. She's ignoring me on her phone, not paying attention to anything. The kids are super polite, and I ask what they'd like to drink. And the little girl says, "Can we have some water, please, in the fun cups?" And the mother puts her phone down, snaps at that child, and I swear almost grabs her and says, "No, you'll have a Diet Coke. Get them a Diet Coke." "But Mom, we're thirsty." "Shut it." Kids just wanted some water. I don't understand people. I really don't understand why it had to be Diet Coke over water. Is there some secret added benefit to Diet Coke that I don't know about? People often don't realize that when you're sitting at the bar, the bartenders hear everything. Sometimes I talk with the guests, but sometimes people have really intense and private conversations like less than a meter away from me. I'll just keep my head down and rinse glasses and pour drinks and basically pretend I'm really busy. Just yesterday, there were 2 guys in their early 20s talking about how their girlfriends were total pains who nagged and complained all the time. They drank a lot of tequila and whiskey, and at one point, one guy said to the other, "You should just sleep in my place, you can't drive like this." The other disagreed, and they got into a drunken argument, and at one point the guy who suggested the sleepover grabbed the other guy's face and said, "F you," and then they just started making out, just out of the blue. Sloppy and drunk making out. It was weird and hilarious. This is my boss's story from when she used to work at a fast food joint. The cashier was a girl who had a short pixie haircut. There was a group of Jehovah's Witnesses that came in and insisted to my manager that they get a different cashier because they don't want any lesbians serving them. The girl was recovering from cancer and has been regrowing her hair. They were immediately kicked out. It was one of the rudest things I've ever heard. I was working as a hostess at a local chain restaurant. The host stand is right next to the bar. There was an older couple, probably in their 70s, eating and having a drink at the bar. They start to walk out with their arms around each other and giggling. Then the woman accidentally drops their box of leftovers. She starts cracking up and says, "I just tossed you salad." And still with arms around each other, laughing hysterically, they walk out. Made my week. Had to throw in at least one nice story for you guys. Former waitress here. I used to work at a sports bar grill type place that did a pretty good weekday lunch business. One day, I was waiting on a group of guys at a round table having a work lunch. They were discussing business and sharing spreadsheets and things like that. At one point, I was walking up to the table to check on them, and the guy with his back towards me was fiddling with his BlackBerry. And as I get closer, I can see he's watching adult material. Keep in mind, this was long enough ago that internet on phones wasn't nearly as common as it is now, so it was kind of crazy. Dudes carrying on a conversation about financial strategies while watching adult content in the middle of a restaurant. I just got their refills and made sure to approach the table from a different angle when I came back. When I was in the front retail section of a certain country-style chain restaurant, I saw a very young boy studying the toys and gifts while his mother was talking to the hostess. At the time, we had a toy squid with a little propeller that was lazily drifting around the little display tank. Once he saw it, his eyes went wide and he yelled in shock, "That looks just like Mommy's toy!" All of the color drained from her face as she ran over, grabbed his wrist, and fled the restaurant, never to be seen again. Way to be subtle, kid. Jeez. I'm German, but live in an Asian country, so it's not very common to meet other people who are German. I was waitressing as a summer job, and one night I was serving this old man who was there with a group of friends. As soon as he sat down, he told his friends in German, "I wouldn't pay $10 to sleep with that slave," talking about one of my Filipino coworkers. I proceeded to continue serving the table the entire night, and the old guy kept on saying more messed up racist stuff about my other Filipino coworkers. When he asked for the bill, I let my coworkers know about the terrible stuff that guy had been saying. The manager, who was also Filipino, confronted him about it, but the old man denied all the allegations. It ended with the racist jerk paying and walking out of the restaurant, stammering to his friend, "How did he know what we were talking about?" I chose that moment to say to them in German with a huge grin, "Good night and thank you for dining with us." Needless to say, the expression on his face was priceless. Sometimes people say really horrible things about other people for no good reason just because they think others can't understand them. It's quite sickening, really. I waited on a table with two young couples on a date. As I approached to clear their table, I overheard them talking about sex. They immediately went quiet once they saw me approach, while smirking not too subtly to each other. I asked them if it was good, and they said they enjoyed it greatly. Upon which I asked, "And how was the food?" They erupted in laughter, and I got a very generous tip. Good times. I work as a bartender once a week. Just last night, an attractive couple came in. They honestly already looked halfway smashed. For a while, I thought I heard a faint buzzing noise, but didn't think much of it. As I come up behind them to serve them food, the lady embraced her man and said, "Oh God, turn this thing off before I lose my mind." I understand public displays of affection, but this is just incredibly awkward for anyone else around you. Please don't do this. I used to work at a family burger joint that was part of a large chain. We saw a lot of birthday parties and stressed out parents. This one afternoon, a smallish group came in to celebrate a toddler's birthday. There were 2 couples and 5 kids under the age of 5. Now, anyone getting this table would think, oh no. You're looking at a bunch of kids' meals, which means getting a bunch of drinks and refills for barely any cost and therefore barely any tip. But I figure I'll make this a fun party for them, and maybe they'll leave a nice tip out of gratitude. Yeah, right. The moment I get to this table, one of the women thrusts a bottle at me, saying it's breast milk which she wants me to heat up with hot water. I smile and say no problem. Hungry babies are crying babies, and it's not like I'd be grossed out by breast milk, especially when it's in a bottle. I'm sure she wants the milk quickly, so I hand the job off to my supervisor while I get the other 9 drinks for the table. When I get back to my section with the drink tray, the lady stands up and yells at me, "If you have a problem with someone, why don't you say it to their face?" It took me a moment to realize that she thought I'd handed the milk to my supervisor because I was grossed out by it. "Oh, no," I said. "There's no problem, ma'am. I just knew I'd be a minute with these other drinks and I figured you'd get the milk sooner, so..." "I don't want to hear it. This is terrible customer service and I'm disgusted." Turning to her friends, she told them, still yelling, "I can't even be here anymore. I'm sorry, but this party is ruined. I'm leaving." And she marched out, dragging her now crying children and leaving both my shift leader and I standing agape in the middle of the section. The worst part was, her friends had to try and finish their poor child's birthday party after this. The birthday boy was crying, and his parents looked like they might want to join him. And of course, no apologetic tip or words were forthcoming. Yeah, I hate to say it, but a lot of the times you're not going to get a tip in that situation. They're not going to be in a great mood, meaning they're not going to be feeling very generous towards you. So you get to deal with all that for pretty much nothing. Sorry. I generally try not to eavesdrop on my guests, and at busy times I find myself keeping 5 or 6 different objectives prioritized in my brain, so I don't hear a lot. Every so often, though, a certain word or turn of phrase will make it through and capture my attention. The most recent of these that comes to mind was a lady I'd guess to be in her mid-20s who, completely straight-faced, told her dining partner, "No, seriously, dead is way better than broken up. At least with dead, I know where he is and what he's up to." That's a little concerning. Maybe you should have called the police. I walked up to the table with a young newly married couple. They seemed to be in conversation, but I was busy, so I didn't have time to wait for them to finish. As soon as I walked up, I heard the girl say, "If you ever lie to me again, I swear to God I will poop on your pillow." There was an awkward pause before I said, "Hi, what can I get y'all to drink?" I worked at a fine dining restaurant during college. Overlooking the lake, white tablecloths, $300 bottle of wine, the whole bit. One night, the matriarch of a family company that is incredibly wealthy and well-known came in with some of the company's executives. It's my table, but a large one. So one of our male servers, I'm female, was helping me take initial drink orders. The entire group ignores me and speaks only to him. My first clue that maybe this isn't going to go well. But whatever, that's fine. Maybe they're just confused about who the lead server is. I pop out to the bar to start getting their drinks from the bar staff. And while I'm out there, our maitre d' comes up to me. Your table has requested that male server to be the one to take care of them. Ouch. Okay, there goes the money I'm gonna make tonight, but okay. Later, I'm walking past their table with a few dirty dishes in my hands, and I hear the matriarch say, "Now there's her proper place." This was in 2011. About a month ago, I served a couple that was celebrating their 30th anniversary. They were dressed to the nines and looking very happy together. I offered to take a picture of them when I saw them awkwardly attempting a selfie. I shot a few pictures and handed her the phone pack. When I went to take his empty plate, I noticed he had kind of a frantic look on his face, but I couldn't gauge the situation. Turns out, the phone was his, not hers. 5 minutes later, she's flipping out about a girl named Candy, who he was apparently texting during their anniversary dinner. Dude obviously didn't care at all. They end up in an all-out brawl, with everyone in the restaurant watching. Needless to say, I got stiffed for the $110 check, and I'm sure he'll always blame me for getting caught. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.